In the beginning, there was cake. Every good story has a beginning, middle, and end. And this one, my beginning starts with cake.
Now time for some interactive fun.
Hey, it's Kirk. I'm still Kirk. I think that's what I usually say. This is still Dumb Test Slate. And I'm back again. And hopefully you could tell by the intro in the last episode, I'm back on my cake into redo. Because the last episode I resurrected an old idea that I got from episode 3 or 4 from this podcast called Cake and Two, which was just a small idea I used, and I for a scene in a romantic comedy. That was the original premise for that episode, but I was going back over old episodes, creating titles and log lines, and I wanted to redo this one. And this is the second one. The last episode I did like the basic setup, and I talked about the characters and my inspirations, that it would be like Cyrano de Bergerac, that original play, be Hidden Love, and all this stuff between two characters that I named Jerry and George, because I said one of my inspirations was I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about the Seinfeld coming out episode, and I talked about my dark horse theory of Seinfeld, where George is actually, well, Jerry and George are actually like closeted gays, and George is in love with Jerry, and that's why they both can never make a relationship work between women. They're secretly in love with each other. And then that, I basically was like, for this story, to keep it simple or to keep me not rambling, that the characters would be called Jerry and George. George would be the kind of introverted, the one behind the scenes that's in love with Jerry, who's like the big star. Because hopefully I said this on the last episode, that the setting is a bakery. They own a bakery together, but it's also a reality TV show where Jerry is this big verbose character who, you know, the camera loves, and entertainment is trying to make him into like this big star and this celebrity baker. But really, George is the one that's behind the scenes doing the actual baking and constructing of these really elegant cakes. And Jerry takes credit for it. And the reason George lets him get away with it all the time and stays behind because he's in love with Jerry. They went to like culinary school. So hopefully I don't remember last episode all that much of what I said, but it was like the setup, the background and all this stuff, because that was the other thing. My B story is that I'm reading the book called Save the Cat by Blake Snyder, sitting next to me right now, about screenwriting and structure of screenwriting and all the things you need to go through step by step to write a successful screenplay. And my long term is that I eventually want to write a full screenplay and submit it. And it'll be one of these ideas that I go through on these episodes from this podcast you're listening to, Dumb Test Slate. Okay. So I guess last week was a to be continued. So I caught you all up. I did the background. I caught you all up because on this one, I'm still talking about cake into redo. And in this one, I'm going over the opening image intro, opening theme statement, the setup, the catalyst, and some movie influences I've had that I probably need to watch again or I haven't seen before. That'll be kind of my influences to this romantic comedy endeavor. Here's a little background about the bakery. This is what I came up with in my head, that the bakery that they work at together will make erotic cakes. So, and I'm setting it like on the town where there's this high street where there's all these different bakery shops and florists and boutiques and all that stuff. That's kind of the visual representation of where this bakery is. And this is like a small bakery. And so they always have to work together. And then there's, you know, this reality show that's being filmed there, where the big secret is that Jerry is the huge star and he's the, you know, face of the show and he has all the success from the show. But in actuality, he doesn't do any of the baking. George does all the baking. George is the baker in the background. And he lets Jerry take all the credit for it, basically because he's in love with Jerry. And it's hidden, though. He's scared that he'll be rejected and his heart will be broken. But they've been lifelong friends, but he's just in love with him in a different way. So yeah, that's the bakery. I have to think of a name for the bakery, but it's an erotic bakery because that leads to the opening scene of the movie. This is my opening scene because in the book Save the Cat, it says that the opening image should change over time. It's hard to explain, but if you ever read that book, it should start with one image, change to another, and it sets the imagery or the hero or what's going on in the movie. So the best thing to do is explain it in a similar way. I want it to be kind of like the intro to the movie Trading Spaces. The original thought was to have that. The music that's playing is a Mozart piece called the Overture from the play Marriage of Figaro. That's what's playing. So I wanted that to initially play, but then when I was like typing up my notes, I had Spotify playing in the background. That song by the OJs, The Backstabbers, came on. So I'm thinking of having that play, but just like the instrumental version, because it lends to this opening scene that you see George. It's going to be George, but you don't really see the person. You see their hands, and it's going to be like this montage of them going through this whole thing of making a cake. And you can see them really putting a lot of love and a lot of effort, a lot of attention to detail in it. You see all these montage shots, and basically just like from their head, you don't see their face. You just see them working and mixing and doing all this stuff that you would do to bake a cake. And it's like a montage, and the instrumental version to the Backstabber song is playing. You see them putting a lot of love into this cake. You get the image in your head of this person's very talented and gifted and loves what they do, and they love baking and all this stuff. But then the last image, you realize that it's not like just some usual wedding cake. It's an erotic cake. That's the change. But also you kind of pans out and you see George like standing back with his hand on his hip, like admiring his work. Then you see, and it pans out more, and you see that it's actually a reality TV show being filmed, but all the cameras are only, they cut off George's head. So you only see the person working. And then you see Jerry enter, grab the cake, and kind of like bump George out of the way. And then the reality show kicks in, and you see Jerry present this cake like he did it because he's the big star of the show, and George kind of gets, pushed away and pushed to the background because Jerry's the star, and they make him this big. They know he's fake. They don't know he doesn't do it, but the show is very successful, and Jerry's a big star. So they keep pushing this lie that he's this incredible world-renowned baker, but in actuality, it's George that does the work. That's the opening scene. You see, so the opening scene, that changed, that you see George doing all this work, and he should get the credit, but Jerry's the one that gets the credit with the reality show and all that stuff. So you see George in the opening scene kind of push to the back and push to a different part of the bakery. You see that either the bakery is attached to a flower shop, or I think he goes outside or in like a common area. And next to them, kind of their, brother sister store is a florist shop that does a lot of stuff for weddings. And you see an older couple in there. These are going to be another characters to the show that I'll kind of build out more. But they kind of know what's going on. They're older and they're wiser. These are going to be the older and wiser characters that kind of like try to talk sense into George to push the story along. Because this leads to the next part, is the setup. In the setup in the book, Save the Cat, the way they talk about the setup is that there's a question to ask. Sorry, not the setup. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead. So that was the opening image that leads to the opening, the theme stated. The book says in the first 5 minutes of a well-constructed screenplay, someone, not the main character, will pose a question or make a statement, usually to the main character. That's just the theme for the movie. And you think about most like romantic comedies, it's always like really obvious when you like pay attention to this. So this is where the theme's going to be stated. Like I said, the older couple runs a flower shop, and George kind of walks to that common area where they can see him. And one of the older characters, says to George, okay, this is how I wrote it out. George like steps into the common area where the flower shop is, and the older couple working there see him, and he kind of looks down and shy. And one of the older couple says to George, "When are you going to tell him how you really feel?" George like dusts some baking powder off of his apron, looks down and says, never. Then the character who asked him the question again says, and when are you going to tell him you're really in love with him? George looks like longingly, like he can still see into the bakery shop at Jerry presenting this cake and talking it up and all how he did all this hard work and all this stuff, which George is the one who did the cake. And George sighs and says, never. And then the Flowers couple turn back around to what they're doing because this is a constant thing. They know the reality. They know George is in love with Jerry. They know he's really the baker behind the scenes. He's the genius. He's the expert. He's the artist. But Jerry takes all the credit. And then you kind of figure out that Jerry knows this too. And he's taking advantage of George because he knows George is in love with him. And it's, boosting his star and his, fake ego. That's the opening. So that's the opening image of George baking the cake. That sets the theme, and you see Jerry taking credit for it. You see the setting of the bakery and the reality show. Then the opening theme is the question that's asked from the Flores couple to George. So I've been thinking, so the next thing is the setup. So the setup, I'm thinking the kind of the, how do I say this? Inspiration. Sorry, I can't think of that word. But the inspiration I have for the scene will be like in The Truman Show, which is set up like a reality show that Truman doesn't know he's on. But they kind of do like this behind the scenes thing when they're talking to the director, and that shows all the background and the history of the show. I'm thinking that can happen to show Jerry and George's full relationship. You see them meeting in culinary school and them opening the bakery together, and Jerry becoming this big character. George is kind of pushed to the background because, it's Jerry's the outgoing and star-like one, and George is the introverted one pushed to the side, but he's doing actual baking. So that will be the setup. That will be the initial setup, how you see it. I'm assuming like that, like a clip show when they're showing because the reality show, of course, is very successful and they have a bunch of fans. So they do the behind the scenes. And that can show the history like they did on Truman Show. That's where I'm thinking where the setup or the initial setup would look like. So after the setup, the catalyst. So there has to be something that happens that pushes the story. In the Hallmark romantic comedies, it's always, the busy executive from New York loses their job and has to go back to where they came from, the small town. It's to get the big person in the small town. That's like the catalyst. And it's always something like that. There's a bunch of Christmas cookies and Christmas baking things for Hallmark movies like that. When I was like researching romantic comedies based on, or based in bakeries, there's always that. There's gingerbread something. Yeah. So this is the catalyst. This is my big time executive, them getting to the small town. The catalyst for my story is you have this background with George being in love with Jerry and him doing all the work. So there's going to be this big, huge contest, this bake-off contest that's going to be live on TV. And all the contestants are people who are in these competing bakeries and these baking reality shows like the one Jerry and George is on. And there's going to be this live contest at the end of the year or the end of the season. It's like a Christmas one or something like that, where it'll be this huge grand prize, like $1 million or something. And that's kind of what everybody's working up to kind of set like the action, the catalyst. But you see the faults in the characters. Like George, he loves the artistry of baking, and he wants the bakery to win this huge reality contest because it's going to be him doing the work. Like whatever big thing they make, it's going to be him. He's the artist behind it, and he wants to succeed in that. But it's going to be Jerry who's going to take all of the credit and the shine and all that stuff. But since it's like a live reality show, Jerry is worried because it's going to expose him as being a fraud because he's not really a baker, or he's not a good baker. George is the one doing that. And he's, pushing that to boost his career and star and fame and all that stuff. So he's really worried that this is a live competition. But of course, he wants to win. Everyone wants some money. They'll get a book deal and their show will be, the best baking reality show and all this fame. So he's struggling with that of how he's going to pull this off while keeping George in the background because he doesn't want to lose his fame. But then there's rival bakeries. So this is one of the things I think will happen. It'll be like the action or the split up of the movie. George will be tempted by a rival baker. Like a rival baker will kind of figure out what's going on and tempt George to threaten to expose the truth about Jerry and their reality baking show that Jerry's a fraud. And George is, he's torn because he doesn't want that to happen because he loves Jerry. He doesn't want anything to happen to Jerry, but he's still worried about exposing his feelings for Jerry and of ruining this this bakery contest at the end of the year. And if he doesn't do good, Jerry won't love him because, that's what this hero wants. If George is the hero wants to be in love with Jerry, open, and Jerry to love him back. And he's torn of keeping the secret because now this rival baker knows, and then how they're going to, do this contest at the end of the year and exposing his true feelings. So that's where George's action and catalyst come from. The rival baker finds out, and the Flores couple are the ones kind of like trying to knock some sense into his head to tell Jerry how he feels. And so that'll be the catalyst, the thing they're working for towards the end of the year, that live contest. And that's where they're all, the things that come up between what's going on between them as characters, as individuals, and together, their relationship together is being strained because of the reality show. And also another thing with the catalyst, the producers for the reality show want to, they're full in on the Milli Vanilli fake baker, Jerry. So they want to add in some kind of craziness to the show. If you probably realize there's a word I'm trying to think of, I can't really think of. It'll pop up in my head. But the producers of the reality show try to bring in a new character from like a rival bakery because they want this background love story of like West Side Story where there's rival bakers falling in love. So they want to create this fake story where Jerry falls in love with a baker from a rival bakery, which drives George even more crazy. Like it tears on even more that he not only in this reality show, he has to hide his bakery skills. He has to watch this fake relationship with a person who he's in love with. So George is really torn, and his hero thing is going to be, does he keep doing this? Does he keep hiding in the background, or does he expose all this and end the show basically to, tell Jerry that he loves them? So that's like the big catalyst. Yeah, that's what I have so far. I have the opening image of the baking actually happening. And you see George is the baker and the artist and the really creative one, and Jerry the one taking credit. Then I have the opening theme, which, shows that and shows George's conflict. That's the word I was trying to think of, conflict between himself and, his relationship with Jerry, and the Flores couple being the older couple that's trying to knock sense into him. The setup, which is like the clip show or the behind the scenes that shows the history of the show, which shows the history of Jerry and George. Then I have the catalyst is going to be this big live event, and that pushes all the conflict for the movie. But yeah, I rambled through that. Sorry, I have to pace myself. I know. But yeah, that's my next part of the story of Cakin 2. And I need to. So the next things I need to come up with better names. I can't keep using Jerry and George. A title for their erotic bakery that they have together. Now there's a couple more movie influences I've come up with so far that I need to either rewatch. I said Bridesmaids, which I'll rewatch because it's just a funny movie. Because her name is Kristen Wiig. Kristen Wiig, like her main character she had a bakery, and then when she got divorced, she kind of lost it. So there's like a bakery theme, even though that's not the main theme. The main theme is her being a bridesmaid for that movie. There is a baking theme. So I will rewatch it because it's a really good movie. I looked up and saw there's a TV series called Baker and the Beauty that's weirdly set in Miami, but it only lasted one season that I'll check out. At least I'll check out the first episode of it. The movie Bros, because that's kind of, it doesn't have anything to do with a bakery or anything about that, but it is, a romantic love story between two guys. And The Birdcage, because, Robin Williams. Gotta watch the Birdcage again. But yeah, those are my influences I need to rewatch or watch for the first time, because there's something that says that the writer Blake Snyder says in the book Save the Cat, that if you can't quote a great line from a movie in the theme you're writing about, that's a problem, because all the greats can do that. So I really need to watch more movies. I'm really bad with movies, especially like movies themed in the one I'm trying to write. Like the rule of thumb is that if you want to be a writer, write. So if you want to be a screenwriter, you gotta watch some movies, and my backlist of movies is very long. So I'll catch up on that and see where it leads me. But yeah, that's my cake into redo. This is like, I'm still, I guess the last episode was like the pitch meeting when I was setting everything up and my influences and characters and settings and all that stuff. Now I'm getting into the opening. So if this is 3 acts, I'm in act 1. I'm still working out act 1. So hopefully the next episode, I'll kind of lean into the end of act 1 and act 2 and more characters, more lines, and I'll see how this goes. But thanks for listening. Hope you enjoy this series. I'm still Kirk. I didn't use AI for this one. Maybe the next episode I'll use AI to see where it can fill in some holes. I'm so excited about this one. I didn't even use AI. I did use it for the images. Like I said, I have a website, dumbtestslate.com, that I really need to update. And my Instagram, dumbtestslate, where I post pictures and videos for like the themes of this show. And I did find out today you cannot use erotic as a prompt with at least with the AI generator I use for images. It said I can't use erotic. I was trying to do erotic cakes, but they don't like that word. But yeah, thanks for listening. Like I said, the next episode, I'm going to slide more into act 1 into act 2. I'll see how I can do that. But thanks for listening. Catch you on the next one.